for being my first interview candidate for the
of course.
Women's History Month, interview series. I guess to start, I would love for you to introduce yourself to everyone and then potentially give like a brief background of, what you've done and where you've come from.
Sure. Thanks for doing this. It's fun to chat about, random stuff that's not like actually research. But sure, so I grew up on the East Coast of the United States, but most of my growing up years were in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I really liked learning. I loved like all the subjects in school as a high schooler. When it came time to go to college, I decided that I was going to do chemistry. So I did my undergraduate degree at Messiah College in chemistry. And then I enrolled here, Penn State, in the chemistry department for my PhD, which I conducted research with Ray Schock, doing inorganic nanoparticle synthesis. I wrapped up that degree in 2018, and then I moved to Northwestern University to do postdoctoral studies with Will Dichtel. And there I kind of shifted my focus. So I was still working on materials, but in Will's lab, I was working on porous polymers. So it was a little bit of a shift. So I was there for a few years. And then when the opportunity presented itself to come back to Penn State, jumped at it. And so I just started here in January.
And here you are.
And here we are.
Welcome to the department.
yeah, it's nice to be here.
Welcome back, I should say.
Yeah, it's a return trip. It's like can't get rid of it.
So I don't know about that like intrigued me. So you mentioned like when you started at Messiah that you chose chemistry. What about chemistry? What drew you to chemistry?
So I had a really phenomenal chemistry teacher in high school, and he presented. Without sounding like too full of myself, at risk of sounding too full of myself, I didn't find school very challenging as a younger person, like in grade school. Mm-hmm. And I thought chemistry was very interesting because it was like a big puzzle. And my teacher would push very hard to like expand my thinking on it. So he was like letting me go way further than like other students, like than I think the typical curriculum was. And he was super enthusiastic and really just excited about having somebody who was interested in learning. So I felt like because of the challenge, it was super intriguing to me. And that like made me want to go into chemistry. I just found it fun. But yeah, it was kind of I feel like I could have done a lot of different things at that juncture. I also really liked math, but at the time I didn't know what I would want to do with math because I didn't really think that I wanted to like teach math. Mm-hmm. So chemistry it was. I liked the lab stuff too. It was fun.
Yeah, definitely intriguing. So a question that kind of goes along with that, but it's more in parallel. How does chemistry, and in particular your research, apply to people's everyday lives?
Sure. So I'm kind of, as I indicated before, I'm a materials chemist by training, and I'm particularly interested in synthetic challenges. So how do we make materials that have features that we're interested in that are otherwise kind of challenging? So in my independent career, I'm really interested in kind of merging the skill sets that I developed as a PhD student in Ray's lab, where I worked more on inorganic nanosolids and more traditional synthetic inorganic chemistry, and then my work on polymers as a postdoc. And so what I don't know how it's fairly fundamental in nature, but materials are all around us. So there's so many things that new materials can enable. So I'm particularly interested in semiconductors, which find application in
everything.
All over the place. Everything.
Yeah. In honor of Women's History Month, who was your most influential woman role model in your professional life, and why did you choose this person?
I would say professionally, the women that I've been the most impacted by were at my undergraduate institution. So it was a small department. Messiah is a pretty small school. It's like 28 at the time. It was like 2,800 undergraduates. But in the chemistry department, it was majority women faculty members. And I didn't do research with them specifically. I worked with one of their male colleagues, but collectively, the three women that made up that department were super huge role models in my life, because I felt like um, they were very supportive and very interested in my success, but also modeled this like really useful kind of life that I thought that I wanted, right? So it was easier for me to map on my own ambitions onto what I saw them model, which was phenomenal scientists, deep thinkers, and also like caring people, had families that they were balancing their work life with, and so it was really a lot easier for me to map on myself onto kind of like their career path. It was really important to me at that moment because I feel a great deal of support, like personally, from women in my family. So my mom and my grandmothers have been really like wonderful role models. But it's in the kind of the broader culture that I grew up. It wasn't so common for women to be quite as like professionally ambitious as I felt. So when I got to college and I had like these phenomenal role models, it was like edifying to me in a way that I think is just like different.
So if I could kind of go off of that, did your interactions and your relationships with your undergraduate women professors, did that kind of clue you into graduate school, or did you previously know about, going this whole research path?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I was looking at colleges and I was like, whatever, 15, 16, I was telling people that I wanted to be a professor of chemistry. Now, I was saying that, but I don't really think that I knew what that meant. Yeah. And like what that pathway was.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, I just, that was the direction that I thought I wanted to go. I thought that that would be like a really great and fulfilling career. And I've taken like, so if you like, extrapolate from that point, when I was 15 to now, it looks like a very linear path, but that's not in reality, like what has happened. Like I've questioned these decisions and I've like, kind of explored other options and stuff. But I mean, yeah. So, but when I was in undergrad, yeah, like I was very curious about their experiences, graduate students and postdocs in some cases, and they were influential and really like open to answering my questions, and probably way too many questions at the time, but super supportive. And yeah, helped me understand what the next phase would look like, what the phases beyond that would look like as well.
So the next one is, who is your favorite Nobel Prize recipient of all time? And
Sure. So there's many that I think are pretty cool, but as a like, and specifically in the area of women, I find them extremely inspiring. But I think that like as a materials person, I'm a little bit inclined to pick somebody that does materials and that sort of thing. So I would say it's like two. So I'll say both. One is Dan Shechtman. He was the Nobel laureate, I think, in 2011 in chemistry, and he discovered quasi-crystals. So quasi-crystals. But prior to his discovery of quasi-crystals, it was thought that there was no five-fold symmetry in nature. So he found this material that he deemed a quasi-crystal, which did have which was five-fold symmetry, which is really interesting. But I think that why I find him so inspiring is that he faced a lot of criticism for that decision or that discovery and that publication. So people really did not believe that that was real. They thought that he was, just full of it, if you will. But he really stuck to his guns and went with where the data were leading him, which was that this was indeed real and worthy of further study, and then was awarded the Nobel Prize a couple decades later. Super interesting guy, super interesting story. The other person that I really just find fascinating and interesting is Roald Hoffman. The Woodward-Hoffman rules and that sort of thing. But he has some really influential books for materials chemists as well. which are like beyond the molecular sort of things that he did earlier in his career. Just really interesting guy. Yeah, kind of. He also, I believe, is a poet, which is kind of cool. So he just has diverse interests, and I think that he's just, yeah, he would be a fun guy to work with, to talk science about. So those are the two.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you for your interview.
Yeah. Thank you. It was fun. It's fun to chat with you anyway.